Cruel, merciless, unforgivable. She hung there, swaying in the dry summer wind, her wrists tied high above her head. Dust clung to her skin, her dress torn and twisted, barely holding together as the rope cut deeper into her arms. Her breath came in short, broken gasps, like every second hurt more than the last. Someone had left her like this on purpose, not to kill her fast, but to make her suffer, to make her talk. They had already searched her once and found nothing. Whoever left her hanging there believed she had hidden the name somewhere on her body. They meant to come back before sundown and make her answer. A tall man stepped closer, slow, careful, watching her. His boots crushed dry grass underfoot. Each step steady, each step deliberate. He didn't rush to help her. He didn't call out. He just stood there for a moment, studying her like she was something he didn't trust yet. The sun burned overhead, casting long shadows across his face, making his eyes hard to read. From a distance, it looked wrong. A strong man. A helpless young woman. No one else around. The kind of moment that could turn ugly real fast. He reached out. His hand hovered near her waist, just above the torn fabric of her dress. For a second, it looked like he might do something no decent man should ever do. The girl flinched, even in her weak state. Not because she thought this stranger wanted her, because pain had taught her that men often reached first and explained later. Her body tensed, as much as the ropes would allow. She had seen men like that before, men who smiled before they hurt you, men who spoke soft before they took everything. Her lips trembled, not from fear alone, from knowing she might not survive another mistake. The man leaned closer, close enough to hear her breathing. Then she forced out a whisper. Touch. That spot. Her voice cracked, barely more than air. The man froze. She tilted her head, just slightly, pointing with her chin toward the inside fold of her dress. Right there. Her eyes struggled to stay open. Lie's what you need. The man frowned. This wasn't fear talking. This was something else, something urgent, something planned. He turned to her again, really seeing her this time, not as a body, not as trouble, but as someone holding on to the last thread of something important. He moved his hand again, slower now, not grabbing, not forcing, just following where her eyes had led him. His fingers traced the inner seam of the dress until they found a rough patch of fresh stitching. There, a small ridge beneath the cloth. Too neat to be a tear. Too deliberate to be an accident. He pulled out a small knife. The blade caught the sunlight for a split second. The girl shut her eyes tight. Not out of fear of the blade, but out of fear that he might not understand in time. He cut the thread carefully. Just enough. The seam opened, and from inside the cloth, something small dropped into his hand, a folded piece of paper. Wrapped in wax to keep it dry, the man stared at it, then back at her. She was fading, fast. Her head dropped forward, her body sagged against the ropes. He stepped in, cutting the rest of the bindings in one quick motion. She fell into him, light as a child, her weight barely there. He caught her before she hit the ground. For a moment, the world went quiet, only the wind and a loose fence creaking somewhere across the field. He laid her down gently in the shade of the tree. Then he opened the paper. Inside were names, 3 of them, written in a careful, tight hand, and one mark beside each name, a small symbol, one he had seen before. Years ago, back when he still wore a badge, back when he still believed the law meant something. His jaw tightened. He looked at the last name again, and this time it hit him like a bullet. Whitmore. Sheriff Amos Whitmore. He slowly turned his head, looking back at the girl lying in the dirt. Her face was pale, her lips dry, her breathing shallow, but even in that state, she looked familiar. He had seen her once before, standing beside the sheriff in town. Quiet, proper, invisible, the sheriff's daughter. The man looked down at the paper again, then back at her. Pieces began to fall into place, too fast, too ugly. He poured a little water from his canteen onto her lips. She coughed, barely waking. Her eyes opened just enough to find him, and she whispered one last thing before slipping away again. "Don't take me home." Barely a breath left. "My father will kill me." The man sat there, silent. The wind picked up, carrying dust across the open land. Somewhere far off, a horse neighed. The world kept moving, like nothing had happened, like no one had just been left to hang under a tree in broad daylight. He looked toward Virginia City in the distance, then back at the girl, then at the paper in his hand. He had come down from the mountains for a quiet errand. Sell some hides, buy some supplies, stay out of trouble. Well, that was the plan, but trouble had found him anyway. And this time, it wasn't small. This time, it had a name, it had a badge, and it had blood behind it. He tightened his grip on the paper. If what he was thinking was true, then this wasn't just about one girl. This was something rotten running through the whole town. Something hidden, something protected, something that had already killed before. He looked down at her again, a girl who should have been safe in her own home, a girl who had been tied up and left to break under the sun by the very man meant to protect her. The man took a deep exhale, then another. He hadn't worn a badge in years, hadn't wanted to, but some things didn't stay buried, and some truths didn't stay hidden. Not forever. He closed his hand around the paper and stared toward the town one more time. If the sheriff was the one behind this, if the law itself had turned rotten, then there was only one question left. How far would a man have to go to bring down a sheriff who owned the truth, the law, and the lives of everyone in that town? The man didn't wait. He lifted her carefully, one arm under her back, the other under her knees. She weighed almost nothing, too light for someone her age. That alone told him enough. He carried her to his horse, tied her steady, then climbed up behind her. No rush in his movements, but no hesitation either. He turned away from Virginia City without looking back, straight toward the low hills that led into the tobacco root country. He knew those trails better than most men knew their own front yard. If anyone came looking, they'd lose his tracks before sunset. The ride was long, hot, quiet. The kind of quiet that sits heavy in your chest. She drifted in and out, her head resting against him, her breathing uneven. Once she stirred just enough to whisper something. "Don't let him find me." He said nothing. He just nudged the horse forward. By the time the sun dipped low, that they reached a small cabin tucked between rock and pine. It wasn't much. Rough wood, one room, a small lean-to for supplies, but it was hidden. That's what mattered. He carried her inside and laid her on the bed, poured water into a tin cup, cleaned her wrists first. Slow, careful. The rope had bitten deep. She didn't wake. Maybe that was mercy. He worked in silence, wrapped the wound, checked for breaks. There were none, just bruises, old ones, new ones, too many to count. He had seen marks like that before, not always on women. Sometimes on boys too young to fight back, and old men too tired to lie well. The shape of a bruise could tell a story if a man knew how to read it. These told him the same thing over and over. Someone had been teaching her fear for years and calling it discipline. That kind of cruelty did not come from temper alone. It came from habit. He leaned back in the chair for a moment, studying her. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was years. Years of someone deciding she didn't matter. His jaw tightened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded paper again. 3 names, 1 symbol, and Whitmore. He'd seen men like Amos before. Clean shirt, steady voice, a badge as shining in the sun, the kind folks trusted, the kind that smiled while doing things no one wanted to look at too close. He exhaled slowly. Hell of a thing, he muttered. The girl stirred again. This time her eyes opened, cloudy at first, then sharper when she saw where she was. Not the tree, not the town, a cabin, a stranger. She tried to sit up too fast. Pain hit her, and she sucked in a breath. "Easy," he said. Just one word, calm. "Low." She froze, watching him, measuring him. That kind of look didn't come from nowhere. That came from learning the hard way who to trust. "Where am I?" she asked. "Safe enough," he said. A small pause. For now, she swallowed. Her eyes moved to the door, then the window, then back to him. Why didn't you take me back? He shrugged a little. You told me not to. Another pause. About that, and I don't much like being told what to do by a man I haven't met yet. For the first time, something almost like a smile touched her face. It didn't last, but it was there. You saw the paper, she said. I did. And you still stayed. He had not decided to trust her yet, but the bruises were real. The paper was real. And fear like hers did not feel borrowed. It felt lived in. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Question is, why didn't you run sooner? She looked away, out the window, at nothing. 'Cause running don't mean anything if he still owns the town. That landed heavy. He didn't argue it, 'cause he knew it was true. She took a breath, steadying herself. My father brings men to the Red Lantern, she said. Not the kind you see at the bar. The other kind. She didn't need to explain more. He understood. They drink upstairs. She continued. They talk. They make deals. And I'm there. Her voice stayed even, too even. Not because she belonged there, not because she wanted any part of it, but because Amos understood something ugly about men with power. A frightened girl pouring drinks in a quiet room could buy him more favor than a sack of cash. That was the part Clara hated most. Not just what he made her do, what he made her understand. They think I don't listen, she said, but I do. Enough to know what kind of place it really was. He nodded once. And the paper. Just a start, she said. There's more. He watched her carefully now, not as someone broken, but as someone holding on to something sharp. Where? She hesitated. Not out of fear, out of caution. Not here, she said. Not in the open. For a moment. Neither of them said anything. Then she met his eyes again. If you're going to walk away, she said, do it now. Because once you know the rest, you don't get to pretend you didn't. He leaned back slowly, looked at the door, then at the rifle resting in the corner, then back at her. He'd come down the mountain for a quiet trip. Now he was sitting in a cabin with the sheriff's daughter, holding a piece of trouble that could burn a whole town down. He let out a breath through his nose. Yeah, he said quietly. I figured as much. Outside. The wind moved through the trees, soft, steady. Like nothing in the world had changed. But inside that cabin, something had, and neither of them could walk away from it now. So the question wasn't whether this would get worse. The question was simple. When the truth finally came out, would it save her life, or be the very thing that got them both killed? Morning came slow in the hills, the kind of morning where the light creeps in quiet, like it's not sure it's welcome. Elias Boone was already awake. He sat on the step outside the cabin, a tin cup of coffee in one hand and the other resting on his knee. Didn't drink much, just watched the trees, listened, old habit. A man who'd worn a badge too long never really stopped listening for trouble. Behind him, inside the cabin, Claire was still asleep, or trying to be. Sleep didn't come easy after a life like hers. He knew that kind too, not from books, from faces. From years he'd rather not remember. He finished the coffee, stood up, and checked the horse. Still there. Still calm. No tracks nearby that didn't belong. Good. But not good enough to stay. He stepped back inside. Clara was sitting up now, back against the wall, watching the door. Not startled. Not relaxed either. Just ready. You always sit outside like that, she asked. Only when I don't trust the day yet, he said. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. He grabbed his hat. I'm heading into town. That got her attention. Her body stiffened a little. Why? Because I need to see what your father's telling people. And if he sees you, he shrugged. Then I'll know how bad this really is. She studied him, then looked away. If you go, she said, don't go near the main street too long. They'll be looking for someone. Not me. She added, you. He gave a short nod. Figures. He didn't ask her to come, didn't offer either. She wasn't ready for town, and he wasn't ready to drag her back into it. Not yet. The ride down felt different this time. Same road, same dust, but now he was riding toward something, not away from it. Virginia City came into view just before noon. The place looked like any other day, wagons rolling, men talking, doors swinging open and shut. Nothing about it said something was wrong. That was the problem. A town like this didn't show its rod up front, and it kept it tucked behind doors and polite smiles. Elias tied his horse outside a general store and walked in like he belonged there. No rush, no reason to stand out. Inside, a couple men were talking low near the counter. He picked up a small bag of tobacco, just to have a reason to stay. "You hear about the girl?" one man said. Elias didn't look up, just listened. "Sheriff's daughter," the other replied. "Taken right off the edge of town." Elias's fingers tightened just a little on the bag. "By who?" "Some drifter from the hills, from what I hear." A pause. "They say the sheriff's already got men out looking. Wouldn't want to be that man when they find him." A quiet chuckle followed. Elias set the tobacco down, paid, and walked out. So that's how it was going to be. Amos wasn't hiding anything. He was rewriting it, turning his own daughter into a victim, turning the man who saved her into the villain. Clean, simple, effective. Elias stepped back into the sun. Across the street, he saw him, Sheriff Amos Whitmore, standing tall, hat clean, badge shining, talking to a small group of townsfolk like nothing in the world was out of place. If you didn't know better, you'd trust him. That was the danger. Elias turned away before their eyes could meet. No need to push it yet. He walked down toward the edge of town, slower now, taking in details, the stable, the saloon. Then he saw it. The Red Lantern. Didn't look like much from the outside, just another building, paint-worn, windows half-covered. The kind of place you'd pass without thinking twice. That was the point. He circled around back, kept to the shadows. There was a side door, slightly open. Voices inside, women's voices, low, tired. He stepped closer, just enough to hear. "She ain't coming back," one voice said. "None of them do." Another replied. A long silence followed, then footsteps. He moved away before he was seen. That was enough, more than enough. He didn't need the whole story yet, just needed to know it was real, and it was. On his way back toward the edge of town, he stopped by a boarding house, Martha Vale's place. He stepped inside, cool air, smell of old wood and stew. Martha stood behind the counter, wiping a glass that had already been cleaned. She looked up, took one look at him, and froze, not long, but long enough. "You're not from here," she said. "Passing through," he answered. She nodded slowly. Her eyes shifted toward the window, then back to him. "Best keep it that way," she said. Something in her tone wasn't just warning. It was fear. Real fear. Elias leaned slightly closer. Town always this nervous. She didn't answer right away, just kept wiping that same glass. Then, quiet as the room would allow, she said, "Only when people start asking the wrong questions." That settled it. Elias stepped back, tipped his hat slightly, and walked out. He didn't stay any longer than he had to. By the time he rode back toward the hills, the sun was starting to drop again. Long shadows stretching across the land. He had what he needed. Not proof. Not yet. But enough truth to know this wasn't just a scared girl telling stories. This was a town holding its breath, and a sheriff making sure no one exhaled too loud. When he reached the cabin, Clara was waiting outside this time, standing, watching the trail. She saw his face before he said a word, and she knew. "It's worse, isn't it?" she asked. He nodded once. "Yeah." For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then he said, calm and steady, "We're going back in." Her eyes didn't widen, didn't panic, just sharpened. Good sign. "Then we do it right," she said, "because if we don't get a second chance." He looked at her for a long second, then gave a small nod. Then we don't miss. If you've made it this far, you already know this one goes deeper than most. So if you enjoy these old Western stories, take a second and subscribe. Now pour yourself something warm, settle in, and tell me this. What time is it where you are right now? And where are you listening from? Because what Elias Boone was about to walk into next wasn't just a town with secrets. It was a place where the truth didn't just hide, it got buried. The light faded slow that evening, the kind of slow that makes a man think too much. Elias stood near the edge of the clearing, looking out past the trees while Clara worked a small fire behind him. Neither of them spoke for a while. They didn't need to. They both knew what was coming next. Trouble doesn't knock. It walks right in. Finally, Clara broke the silence. There's more than the house, she said. Elias turned slightly, not fully facing her. Figured there would be. She poked the fire, watching the flames instead of him. My father doesn't keep records in one place. That'd be too easy. He gave a small nod. Where then? She hesitated, not scared, just choosing her words. There's an old storage room behind the church, she said. Not the main one. The one nobody uses anymore. Elias turned now. That caught his attention. Church, huh? She nodded. He keeps things there sometimes. Not all the time. Just when he thinks no one would ever look. Elias let out a quiet breath. That's the kind of place a man hides things he never wants found. Clara finally looked up at him. There's a small space under the floor, she added. I found it once when I was younger. My father dragged me there years ago thinking I was too young to understand what he was hiding. He was wrong. I understand it now. Elias studied her face. There was something different in her now. Still tired, still hurt, but sharper, like she'd crossed a line inside herself and wasn't going back. You sure it's still there? He asked. No, she said. But if it's not, then it's somewhere worse. That was enough for him. He walked over, grabbed his rifle, and checked the chamber out of habit. Click. Clean. Ready. Clara watched him. You really think you can walk back into that town and just take it? He gave a faint, tired smile. Ain't planning to ask permission. That got a small breath of air out of her. Not quite a laugh, but close enough. Then her face settled again. Serious. There's something else, she said. Elias paused. Always is. She looked down at her hands, then back up. If we find what's under that floor, it won't just be names. He didn't respond right away. Just waited. It'll be proof, she continued. The kind that doesn't stay quiet. Now he nodded. Then we don't give it a chance to disappear. The fire cracked softly between them. Outside, the wind shifted. Cooler now. Night coming in. Elias stepped out again, scanning the dark line of trees. Still nothing, but that didn't mean much anymore. He went back inside and leaned his rifle against the wall. Then he sat down across from her. Listen, he said. His tone changed, lower, more direct. Once we step back into that town together, things move fast. She didn't look away. I know. No turning around, he added. I know. He held her gaze a second longer, making sure. Then he nodded. All right. Another stretch of quiet followed. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out the small folded paper he'd found earlier. She looked at it like it weighed more than it should. These names, she said softly. They're not the worst of it. Elias leaned forward slightly. Then what is? She met his eyes again, and this time there was no hesitation at all. What they did after the doors closed, that sat in the air between them. No need to explain. Some things didn't need words. Elias leaned back slowly and ran a hand across his jaw. He'd seen bad men before, done bad things under orders he thought were right. But this was something else. This was a man using the law to hide from it, and using his own blood to do it. He stood up again. Restless now. The kind of restless that meant sleep wasn't coming easy. Get some rest, he said. We move at first light. Clara didn't argue, didn't ask questions. She just nodded and lay back down, but her eyes stayed open a little longer than they should have. Elias stepped outside one last time before turning in. The sky was dark now, stars clear above the ridge. Everything looked calm, peaceful even, but he knew better. Peace like that didn't last when truth was close. He glanced toward the direction of Virginia City. Somewhere out there, a sheriff slept just fine, a man who thought he had everything under control, a man who believed no one would ever dig deep enough. Elias stood there a long moment, then turned back toward the cabin, because come morning, they weren't just going to look for answers. They were going to open something that had been buried on purpose, and once that floor came up, there was no telling what would be staring back at them. They moved before the sun had fully climbed. No wasted time, no second thoughts. Elias saddled the horse while Clara wrapped her arms tight, hiding the tremble she didn't want him to see. The air was cooler in the morning, but it wouldn't stay that way long. Summer in Montana didn't ease up for anyone. They rode down in silence, not the calm kind, the kind where both people are already thinking about what could go wrong. By the time Virginia City came into view, the streets were just starting to wake. Perfect timing. Too early for crowds, too late to look suspicious. Elias slowed the horse before they reached the main road. "You stay close," he said. "I always do," she replied. No fear in her voice, just truth. They tied the horse behind a row of buildings and moved on foot. Clara kept her head low, a hat pulled down just enough to shadow her face. From a distance, she looked like any other young woman running errands. That was the idea. They reached the church without trouble. Old wood, faded paint. A place people came to feel safe. Funny how that worked. Elias pushed the side door open slowly. It creaked just enough to make him pause. He listened. Nothing. They stepped inside. Cool air. Dust floating in the light. Rows of benches untouched for days, maybe weeks. Clara didn't stop it. She led him straight past the main hall, through a narrow passage to a back room barely bigger than a storage shed. "This one," she said quietly. Elias shut the door behind them. He scanned the room. Barrels, old crates, broken chairs, nothing that looked important. Which meant everything might be. Clara knelt near the far corner and brushed dust away from the floor. There. A seam in the boards, barely visible unless you knew where to look. Elias crouched beside her, ran his fingers along the edge. Loose, he pulled out his knife and wedged it in, pried up slowly. The wood gave with a soft crack. He lifted one plank, then another. Dark space underneath. Clara held her breath. Elias reached down inside. His hand found something. Not dirt. Not just dirt. He pulled it up. A small leather book. Worn. Edges cracked. But intact. Clara's eyes locked onto it. "That's it," she whispered. Elias opened it carefully. Pages filled with writing. Names. Dates. Numbers. Marks beside some of them, not random. Organized. Cold. Businesslike. He flipped a few pages. Stopped. There it was again. The same symbol from the paper. Over and over. Next to certain names. Clara leaned closer. "That mark," she said. "Those are the nights someone didn't come back." Elias didn't speak. He didn't need to. He kept turning pages. Then he saw something else. List at the back. Shorter. But clearer. Names crossed out. All of them women. Clara covered her mouth. She knew some of those names. Not from record. From faces. From nights at the Red Lantern. From girls who stopped showing up. A sound broke the silence. Footsteps. Outside the room. Elias snapped the book shut. Looked at Clara. No words. Just a look. She understood. He slid the book into his coat. Pulled the planks back into place as best he could. The door handle moved. Just slightly. Then stopped. Long enough to feel it in your chest. Then the door opened. Deputy Owen Pike stood there. Gun low. Eyes sharp. He looked at Elias first, then at Clara. Recognition hit fast. Too fast. "Well," Owen said slowly, "ain't this something?" Clara didn't move, didn't speak. Elias straightened up just a little. Not aggressive, not weak either. "Morning," Elias said. Owen gave a short smile. Didn't reach his eyes. Sheriff's been looking for you. He said to Clara, whole town has. You picked a bad place to hide. Elias shifted his weight slightly. Just enough to be ready. Didn't come here to hide, he said. Owen's eyes flicked to the floor, just for a second, then back up. He looked less like a man protecting the law than a man trying not to look straight at it. Like he already knew that room held more truth than he wanted on his conscience. Yeah, he said. I figured that. The room went thick and quiet. Then Owen took one step inside, gun still down, but not by accident. You got something that don't belong to you? He asked. Elias didn't answer. Didn't need to. Owen already knew. Another step. Closer now. That book. Owen said quietly. You don't understand what you're holding. Clara finally spoke. Yes, we do. Her voice didn't shake. Not this time. Owen looked at her. Really looked. Something shifted in his expression. Just a little. Then it was gone. You should have stayed gone, he said. And that was the moment everything broke. Elias moved first, fast. He lunged forward, knocking Owen's arm offline just as the deputy started to raise the gun. The shot went wide, loud in the small room. Clara ducked. Elias drove into Owen, both of them crashing into a stack of crates. Wood splintered. Dust filled the air. Owen fought back hard. You don't wear a badge in a place like this without knowing how to use your fists. They traded blows. Close. Messy. No room for clean moves. Just survival. Clara grabbed the nearest thing she could find. A broken chair leg. She hesitated for half a second, then swung. The wood cracked against Owen's shoulder, not enough to drop him, but enough to break his rhythm. Elias took the opening, drove him into the wall, hard. Owen hit the boards and slumped just enough. Not out, but stunned. Breathing heavy. Elias stepped back, grabbing Clara's arm. We go, he said. No argument. They ran. Out the back, through the narrow passage, into the daylight. Behind them, the church stayed quiet, but that wouldn't last. It never did. They didn't stop running until the town was behind them again. Only when the hills started to rise did Elias slow the pace. Clara was breathing hard now, but she didn't complain. She just looked at him. Then at his coat. The book, she said. He nodded. It's real, he answered. And it's worse than you thought. She swallowed. Looked back toward the town one more time, then forward again, because now there was no going back. Only forward, and whatever came next. Because if what was written in that book was true, then someone out there had already decided they were never supposed to leave that room alive. They didn't stop until the trees swallowed the road. No tracks. No witnesses. Just wind and dirt and the sound of their own breathing. Elias finally pulled the horse to a halt near a dry creek bed. Not the cabin. Not yet. Too risky now. Clara slid down slowly, her legs unsteady but holding. She didn't speak. Didn't ask questions. She just watched him as he took the book out of his coat. That little thing felt heavier than a rifle now. Elias sat on a flat rock and opened it again. No rush. No guessing this time. He read, line by line, page by page. Clara stayed quiet. She'd already seen enough to know this wasn't going to get better. The wind moved through the dry grass, soft, like the land didn't care what men did on it. Elias stopped on one page, then another, then one more. His face didn't change much, but his eyes did, harder now, colder. Claire stepped closer. What is it? He didn't answer right away. Just turned the book toward her. There, he said. She leaned in. Read the lines. Her breath caught, not loud, but sharp. The names she knew were there. The ones she didn't were worse. Dates, rooms, marks, and then something new. A second mark beside a few names, different from the first. Clara pointed at it. That wasn't there before. She said. Elias nodded slowly. That's not a visit mark, he said. Then what is it? He turned to her. Didn't soften it. End of the line. She didn't understand at first. Then she did. And when she did, she stepped back, like the page had burned her. No. she said under her breath. Elias closed the book. Yeah. A thick quiet settled between them. Not shock anymore. Something worse, knowing. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold something together inside that was already breaking. I knew some of them disappeared, she said, but I thought. She stopped. Didn't finish it. Didn't need to. Elias stood up, slow, measured. This ain't just a house problem, he said. This is a system. She turned to him, eyes red now, but steady. How many? He shook his head slightly. Don't matter yet. What matters is where. That made her frown. What do you mean? He opened the book again, flipping to the back. Every one of these second marks lines up with a date, he said. And those dates line up with something else. He tapped the page. Clara leaned closer again. What he looked toward the hills, thinking. Supply runs, he said. Wagon movements, quiet nights. Her face shifted. You think they... He nodded once. Yeah, she swallowed hard. Where Elias closed the book again, then pointed out toward the open land. Alder Gulch. The name sat between them like a storm waiting to break. Clara knew that place. Everyone did. Old mining ground, abandoned in parts, quiet, easy to disappear things in, or people. Her voice came out lower now. They buried them. Elias didn't answer. Didn't have to. His silence said enough. She turned away, pacing a few steps, trying to breathe through it. This wasn't fear anymore. This was something deeper, something that didn't go away once you knew it. My father, she started, then stopped. Saying it out loud would have made it too real. Elias let the moment stand. Some truths had to come from the one carrying them. Finally, she turned back. If that's true, she said, then we can prove it. He nodded. Maybe, not maybe, she said. For once, not maybe. There was fire in her now. Not loud, but solid. Elias saw it, and he respected it, but he also knew something she didn't fully see yet. Problem is, he said, digging that truth up won't just bring answers. It'll bring every man who helped bury it, and your father ain't gonna let that happen. She didn't look away. He already tried to kill me once, she said. What's one more time that landed harder than she meant it to? Elias exhaled slowly. That's not a gamble you get to lose, he said. The breeze shifted and carried dust across the dry ground. Elias looked back toward the direction of town, then toward the hills leading to Alder Gulch. 2 paths, neither clean, but only one led forward. He turned back to her. We don't go in blind, he said. We go smart. She nodded. Then we go tonight. He paused. Night meant cover, but it also meant risk. Then again, daylight was no safer. He gave a small nod. All right. Clara let out a slow breath. Not relief. Resolve. They both knew what this meant now. This wasn't about hiding. This wasn't about running. This was about digging up something that had been buried on purpose. And once they did that, there was no putting it back. Elias tucked the book back into his coat, checked his rifle, then looked at her one more time. Once we find what's out there, he said quietly, there's no going back to the way things were. She met his eyes without hesitation. There never was. That was the truth of it. Plain and simple. The sun dipped lower behind the hill. Shadows stretched long across the land, and somewhere out past those ridges, under dry earth and forgotten ground, lay the kind of proof that could tear a town apart. But here's the thing. Sometimes the truth doesn't stay buried because it's hidden well. Sometimes it stays buried because someone is still watching it. And if that was true, then the moment they stepped into Alder Gulch that night, they might not be the only ones digging. Night came down fast over Alder Gulch. No moon, just a thin line of starlight stretching over broken hills and old mining cuts. The kind of dark that doesn't just hide things. It swallows them. Elias and Clara moved slow along the ridge, keeping low, staying off the open ground. No talking now. Every sound mattered. Every step had weight. The land out here wasn't empty. It just looked that way. Elias stopped first, raised a hand. Clara froze behind him. He crouched, studying the dirt. Fresh tracks. Not many, but not old either. Boots. At least 2 men, maybe more. He glanced back at her. Didn't need to explain. She understood. They weren't the only ones who knew about this place. They moved again, slower now, careful. Down into the shallow dip where the old ground had been turned years ago. This was it, Alder Gulch, or what was left of it. The kind of place men used when they didn't want anything found again. Elias picked a spot near a dead tree. Its roots twisted up like it had tried to crawl out of the earth. He knelt, set the rifle down, started digging with his hands first, then with a small shovel from his pack. He didn't choose the place at random. The book marked the date, and Clara remembered the wagon path her father forbade her to ask about. That dead tree was the only thing in the wash that matched both. Clara watched the darkness around them while he worked. Her eyes never stayed still. Every shadow felt alive, every silence too loud. After several tense minutes and more than one wrong scrape through packed dirt, the shovel finally struck something softer than earth. Not rock, not wood, something softer. Elias slowed down. Careful now. He cleared more dirt away. Clara stepped closer. Didn't want to, but had to. The first thing they saw was cloth, faded, torn, then bone. Not much, but enough. Clara stopped breathing for a second. Her hand went to her mouth, but she didn't make a sound. Elias kept working, not fast, not slow, just steady. More came into view. Second set, smaller, closer to the first. 2 of them. Very close. Like whoever did it didn't want to waste time. Clara turned away, not running, just trying to hold herself together. Elias sat back on his heels, looked down at what was left, then at the ground around it. No markers, no care, just dirt over truth. He reached out and brushed more soil away from one of the bodies. Something caught his eye, a small piece of metal. He pulled it free, a hairpin, bent, but still holding a faint pattern on the side. Claire saw it, and this time she did react. That's hers, she said quickly. Elias looked up. Who, Lena? She said, she worked upstairs. She used to sit with me before the men came in. Claire knelt and pointed to the second patch of disturbed ground a few feet over. If Lena was there, the other one would be close, Clara said. She always sat nearest the back wall. Oh, they would have taken the other one down beside her in the dark. Her voice cracked just a little. Then one night, she didn't show up. Elias looked back down at the hairpin, then at the bones. That was all the confirmation they needed. The book wasn't lying. This place wasn't rumor. It was real. A sound snapped through the dark, not loud, but wrong. Elias's head lifted fast. Clara turned too. There, up on the ridge, a shape moved, then another. Not animals. Too still, too controlled. Elias grabbed his rifle, low, ready. He didn't fire, not yet. He watched, counted, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. Hard to tell in the dark, but enough, more than enough. They've been watching, Clara whispered. Elias nodded once. Yeah. No panic in his voice, but no doubt either. This wasn't chance. This was waiting. The figures on the ridge didn't move closer, didn't speak, just stood there, like they didn't need to rush, like they already had the upper hand. Elias leaned slightly toward Clara. When I say moo, he said quietly, you don't look back. She didn't argue, didn't question. She just nodded. His grip tightened on the rifle. He adjusted his stance just enough to cover their exit. Then one of the shapes stepped forward. Slow, deliberate. A voice carried down, calm, familiar. You should have stayed in the hills. Claire's face went pale. She knew that voice. Even before the man stepped into what little light there was, Deputy Owen Pike, live, unhurt enough. And, not alone. Elias didn't lower the rifle, and didn't raise it either. Just held it steady. Owen stopped halfway down the slope, hands visible, gun still at his side. Didn't figure you for the digging type, he said. Elias didn't respond. Owen's eyes shifted to Clara, then to the ground. He saw enough. His jaw tightened. But he didn't look surprised. That was the worst part. You found it, he said quietly. Not a question, a fact. Clara stepped forward half a step. "Why are you here?" she asked. Owen looked at her, really looked this time, and something in his face changed. Not soft, but not hard either, "Because I knew you would come," he said. Amos never left anything to chance. He always kept men watching the old graves after dark. He was never afraid someone would guess. He was afraid someone would prove it. For a moment, nobody spoke. The wind moved again, colder now, carrying the smell of dirt and something older. Elias shifted slightly, still ready. "You here to finish what he started?" he asked. Owen didn't answer right away. He looked back toward the men behind him, then back at Elias. "No," he said, "but they are—" And that was when everything tilted, because now it wasn't just about what was buried in the ground. It was about who was willing to keep it buried. Elias felt it before it happened. That moment right before violence breaks loose, when no one's talking anymore, when choices run out. He took a slow breath, adjusted his grip. Claire stood beside him, not behind, beside. And somewhere in the dark, one of those men shifted his weight just enough, just wrong enough, and Elias knew. The next move wouldn't be word, it would be blood. But the real question wasn't who would draw first. The real question was this: when the shooting started, out there in the dark, would Owen Pike stand with them, or be the man who pulled the trigger? Nobody moved for one long second. That was the thing about gunfights. They usually started before the first shot. They started in a man's shoulders, in his eyes, in the way his hand sat too close to the grip. Elias saw it on the ridge. One of the men behind Owen was already leaning forward, already thinking he knew how this would end. He thought wrong. The first shot cracked through the dark and hit dirt near Elias's boot. Then the whole night came apart. Elias shoved Clara down behind the dead tree and fired back in one smooth motion. One muzzle flash on the ridge vanished. A man cursed. Another dropped low. Now everybody was moving. Dust kicked up. Loose stones rolled downhill. The dark stopped being quiet and turned mean. Clara stayed low, hands over her head for half a breath. Then looked up again. She wasn't frozen. Not anymore. She saw Owen step sideways. Not toward Elias, not toward the men behind him, but into the middle of a choice he should have made a long time ago. One of Amos Whitmore's men barked at him. "Shoot him." Owen didn't. That told Elias plenty. A second gun went off from the ridge. Wood splintered above Clara's shoulder. Elias fired again, forcing the shooters to duck. Then Owen turned and hit the nearest man with the butt of his revolver. Hard. No speech. No warning. Just a choice made too late, but made all the same. The man stumbled down the slope. Another one swung toward Owen and fired wide in the dark. That was all the proof Elias needed. Owen Pike had picked a side. The wrong men noticed too. Now they wanted him dead right along with the others. "Move," Elias said to Clara. This time she didn't hesitate. She stayed low and followed him through the wash, feet sliding in loose dirt, heart probably pounding hard enough to shake the hills. Owen came after them, covering their retreat with two quick shots that bought just enough time. They made it behind a line of broken rock where the old mining cut dropped off into a narrow path. For a moment, the gunfire thinned, only breathing now. Harsh, fast. Clara looked at Owen like she still wasn't sure whether to thank him or slap him. He looked back at her and then away. Fair enough. Elias kept his rifle trained uphill. "You got 10 seconds, he said. Owen nodded once. "Sheriff sent them after the book," he said. "No surprise there," Elias replied. "He didn't send me to save you," Owen added. "That part was my own stupidity. Even in the middle of it, that almost sounded honest enough to pass for humor." "Almost." Claire stared at him. "Why now?" she asked. Owen swallowed. "Because I kept telling myself your father had lines he would not cross. Then I helped bury too many things I should have stopped. I carried your mother's coffin once, and I swore I would not carry yours too. After a while, a man runs out of lies." That landed. No one said anything for a beat. Then a voice drifted down from the ridge, older, steady, confident in the worst kind of way. "Sheriff Amos Whitmore, you done hiding behind rocks," Nick Clara. Her face changed the instant she heard him. Not fear, exactly. Not this time. Something colder. Something tired. Amos stepped into view above them with 2 more men spread out behind him, hat on, badge catching starlight like he was still some decent man keeping order. That was the rotten joke of it. Men like him always looked best right before the truth caught up. He looked down at Clara first. Never at Elias. Not really. Men like Amos only ever saw other men when they got in the way of what they owned. "You've caused enough trouble," he said. His voice was calm, too calm, the kind fathers use when they want the world to think they care. Clara rose just enough to be seen. "You left me hanging from a tree." Amos did not blink. "You forced my hand. There it was. That easy. That plain. Like cruelty was just bookkeeping to him." Owen looked sick hearing it out loud. Good. Maybe sickness was the first sign a conscience still had a pulse. Elias kept his rifle steady. "You don't get her back," he said. Amos finally shifted his eyes to him. The look was almost amused. "A man from the hills thinks he's going to lecture me about law." Elias answered plain. "This ain't law. Not the kind they preach on Sundays anyway." No speech after that. No fancy line. Just the truth. Amos smiled without warmth. Then let's not call it that. He raised his hand a little. One of the men behind him started to circle left, trying for a better angle. Elias saw it. So did Clara. And before anyone could stop her, she stood higher and shouted toward the ridge, "Lena Mercer is down there." The words hit like a hammer. Even the men on the ridge paused. Amos did not, but the pause was enough. Clara's voice carried stronger now. "There are bones in this ground, and your mark is in the book." Owen looked at Amos. Really looked. Not at the badge. At the man. At what was left when the shine wore off. Amos changed then. The careful sheriff vanished. What stood there now was just a father who had run out of masks. He drew fast. Not at Elias. At Clara. Owen fired first. The shot cracked through the gulch, and Amos staggered back a step, more shocked than hurt. One of his men opened up wild, and Elias answered hard, forcing them down again. Now the ridge was chaos. Too many bodies moving. Too much dirt and shadow. Owen grabbed Clara's arm. Go! Elias covered them as they broke from the rocks and cut through the lower path toward the far end of the gulch. Behind them, shouts rose, then hoofbeats. That was worse. A fight on foot was one thing. A chase was another. They reached the horses tied in the scrub just as the first rider came down the slope. Elias swung into the saddle. Clara climbed up behind him. Owen mounted his own horse with one hand, keeping the revolver in the other like a man who had finally decided what sort of death he was willing to risk. They rode hard into the dark, leaving Alder Gulch and its bones behind, but not the truth. Not anymore. Because Amos Whitmore had made one mistake tonight. He had stopped pretending. And once a man like that shows his real face, there's only one thing left to do. Bring him down where everybody can see him. But when dawn came over Virginia City, Elias Boone would have to decide something fast. Should he take the proof to the law, or to the one place where the law had already been bought and sold? Dawn found them on the far side of the hills, where the wind ran cleaner, and a man could breathe without tasting dust and lies in the same mouthful. Elias Boone reined in at the edge of a rise and looked back toward Virginia City. From that distance, the town looked harmless, just rooftop, just smoke, just another little place trying to survive out in hard country. By then, it was already starting to crack. The book had names. The grave had bones. Clara had finally spoken where other ears could hear. Judge Silas could hide paper for a while, but not panic. He had spent years keeping Amos clean on paper, and now even he could feel the ground shifting under him. The Red Lantern did not open that next night. Men who had acted untouchable suddenly found reasons to leave town early, and Amos Whitmore, badge or no badge, could no longer pretend this was only family trouble. His power was broken. Whether the law admitted it yet or not, a man like that could survive a bullet. He could not survive the truth once a town finally turned and looked him in the eye. Elias knew the hard part was not over. Clara still had a life to rebuild. Owen still had a debt to answer for. But for the first time, none of them were riding toward a lie. That was the trouble with evil most times. It rarely looked like evil from far away. It looked respectable. It wore a badge. It sat in church. It shook hands in daylight and buried shame after dark. Clara sat behind him, quieter now, but not smaller. That was the thing that mattered most. She'd started this story hanging from a tree, left there like her life belonged to anyone stronger than her. Now she was still bruised, still tired, still carrying more sorrow than a young woman ever should. But she was no longer broken in the same way. She knew the truth. She had spoken it. And once a person speaks the truth out loud, something changes inside them. Fear does not vanish, but it stops being master of the house. Owen Pike rode a little behind them, looking like a man who had finally met himself and did not much enjoy the introduction. Elias looked at Clara and saw she was watching the sunrise, not the town. That mattered. Some people survive because they keep turning toward the light even after the dark has done its worst. The truth is, most decent lives are not built by never meeting darkness. They are built by meeting it, naming it, and refusing to hand it the deed to your soul. Power without character always turns hungry. And pain may explain a person, but it never excuses cruelty. Maybe that is the question left for all of us. When your moment comes, will you protect comfort or protect what is right? That is the kind of question a man carries longer than he expects. From my side of the fire, I will say this. Stories like this stay with me because they are about choices. And buried under all the grit and sorrow, there is usually one stubborn truth that still shines. A human soul can be wounded badly and still choose not to live on its knees. Maybe that was what mattered most to Elias in the end. Not that he had found evil wearing a badge. Men like that had always existed. What mattered was that Clara had stood up under the weight of it and spoken anyway. And once one honest voice breaks the silence, other people start remembering they have one too. How Elias brought the sheriff down where the whole town could see it. That's a story for another night, if you want to hear it. Before we close, one honest note. This story has been gathered and retold, with a few added details to deepen the lesson, the feeling, and the value of the telling. The images in this video are AI-assisted illustrations used to bring the mood of the story a little closer. If this one is not your kind of fire, that is all right. Rest easy tonight, take care of your health, and leave this tale with the wind. But if it stayed with you, leave me a comment so I know, and I will keep searching out more stories worth telling.